Oi, pessoal, bem-vindos de volta. Para dar continuidade aos painéis internacionais, a gente vai ter o terceiro painel do dia, que o mediador também é, como eu comentei antes, o Leonardo Feijó. Ele vai estar aqui mais uma vez com a gente. E é sempre bom ter o Léo aqui. O painel passado foi ótimo, tivemos contribuições perfeitas, pessoas maravilhosas de vários cantos do planeta, que é o intuito dessa edição do prêmio, trazer mais gente possível, conectar pessoas de todos os lugares através da música. E eu vou abrir aqui com vocês o terceiro painel do dia, que é sobre Music Business Education, Global Challenges, e, como eu comentei, é mediado pelo Leonardo Feijó. Os integrantes são Ace, Carin, Nuernberg, Professor Samuel Howard. Então, eu vou abrir agora em inglês para os nossos convidados. Everyone, thanks again for being here. I'm going to open the panel 3 for the Music Pro Awards. With the word now, please, Leonardo Feijó again. Welcome, all of you, and thank you for being here. It's an honor. It's a pleasure to have you all here. And, let's have a great panel. Thank you.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone, for being speakers, Carin, Samuel, and Ace. Good afternoon. Sorry for being here again. For those who watched the last panel. Here I am again. So we're going to discuss music business education, global challenges. My name is Leo. I'm the director of the School of Music Business, Música e Negócios, a partnership with Instituto Gênesis and the Catholic University of Rio. So we invited Carin Nuernberg from Berkeley. She's Vice President of Academic Strategy and Dean of Berkeley Online. And I know Carin speaks Portuguese. That's great. And, she enjoys Brazilian music as well. So welcome, Carin. Samuel Howard-Spink from NYU. He's a clinical associate professor of music business, and I know he has already participated in educational missions to Brazil, taking NYU students to Rio de Janeiro before the pandemic. Welcome, Samuel.
Thank you.
And Ace, who is in London, right? He's head of industry partnerships and business development at ICMP London. Welcome, Ace.
Hello, how are you? Thank you.
Good to see you all. So the purpose of this panel is to provide an insight into global challenges and opportunities in music education and training for music business. Among them, how important is music business education to artists and other professionals today, challenges with the pandemic, and how universities are addressing the issue of diversity and inclusion in the music industry. So each speaker will have 8 minutes to present their organization and their views on technology, music, diversity, education, everything we're going to discuss around this panel. So I'm going to start with Carin, please, and then Sam, and then Ace. Welcome, Carin. Thank you very much.
Vou falar pouquinho em português para começar. Muito obrigada, Leo, por me convidar para esse congresso e pela oportunidade de fazer parte desse distinto grupo. É uma pena que nós não estamos juntos em Brasil, um país que eu amo, mas felizmente a tecnologia nos permite conversar virtualmente e que bacana que estamos na sala de Ela também. Então vou falar em inglês agora. Sam and Ace, it's a pleasure to be here with you. I'm honored to be part of this group. As Leo said, I'm Vice President of Academic Strategy at Berkeley. I'll tell you a little bit about what we do. Our mission is to educate, train, and develop students to excel in a career in music and in the arts more broadly. And I want to talk with you a little bit about Berkeley Online because that has figured in such a prominent way for many years now, but really as a result of the pandemic. So Berkeley, whose campus is in Boston, we also have centers in Abu Dhabi and Valencia, Spain, more recently in New York City. But Boston, Massachusetts is the home base. We have about 6,000 students studying on campus with us, mostly undergraduate, but some graduate level students as well. And we had this idea dating back to the 70s that there were people around the world that wanted to engage with faculty at Berkeley and study the curriculum that we offered. And we had a correspondence course where we would mail lessons to musicians around the world, and they would study these materials on paper. They would do their assignments, mail them back, and a Berkeley professor would grade them and then send the next installment. And so that seed was planted many years ago. And in 2002, we founded Berkeley Online. And the mission really was an extension of Berkeley. So we wanted to continue to educate, train, and develop musicians to excel in their careers. But it became about increasing access and also addressing affordability, given the high cost of education in the United States. And so we have a series of offerings. We often refer to them as a multi-layered wedding cake. And at the bottom are what we call MOOCs, or massive open online courses. And so these are free learning experiences available to people around the world. And we deliver them through our partners, one of whom is Coursera, and the other is edX. And so these, what I like to think is that we pick some of the most amazing educators at Berkeley, and then we film them, and they give lectures and demonstrations that we make freely available through those partnerships. And then a layer up from that are a la carte courses. And these are 12-week experiences that you can take for credit or non-credit. Music business is a huge part of our curriculum. It's one of the most popular areas, as is music production, songwriting, performance, particularly guitar. And so you can have these experiences for 12 weeks. And up a layer from that is a series of certificate programs where you can study in a concentrated area, again, like music business, that have maybe a 3 to 4 course experience that lets you dive deeper into the subject area. And then up a layer from there are degree programs. And so we have an undergraduate degree program. It's now a Bachelor of Arts. And there are 8 majors that you can study fully online. And again, music business is one of them. And then at the top layer, master's degrees, 4 master's degree programs that you can study fully online. And you know, from my experience, the audience is worldwide. About 35% of our students are outside the US in our courses, certificate programs, and degree programs. With our partnerships with Coursera and edX, it's actually flipped. So 70% of the audience is international or outside the US, 30% is domestic. And so there's a real hunger and appetite for, I think, high quality information about what's happening in the music business. And I'll say it's incumbent upon us as an institution to empower artists and to make sure that what we're training them for is sustainability in the industry, and understanding that that might mean a diversification of your income streams. And so we like to think of the industry in terms not just related to the recorded industry or say music publishing, but much more broadly inclusive of film, gaming, music therapy, music education, music technology, all of the ways that the creation of music is supported in the industry that we all love. And so we've had a lot of lessons learned as a result of the pandemic. I think we were positioned really well to support students, not perfectly, and I'm sure we'll get into more of that as we talk with each other. But I think it demonstrated for us that it's very, very hard for, I think, students to be sitting in a Zoom session all day long in their classes. And so we design experiences with a very robust production team that builds experiences that allow you to engage asynchronously, meaning as you have time, and synchronously, where there are live moments where you can engage with Berkeley faculty and industry professionals. And I think that model has served us really well. So I'll leave it there, and I'm really excited to be part of the panel. And yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carin. Thank you. I'd like to invite Samuel now. Welcome, Sam.
Hi, good. Okay, I hope you can hear me all right. Very pleased to be here, Leo. Thank you very much for inviting me. This is a rare opportunity to get to talk about music business education specifically. So I'll try to keep within the time frame. NYU has had a music business program since the 1970s. We currently have an undergraduate program which lasts for about 4 years, and it's a music and liberal arts degree with specialized music business courses. And the students also take courses at the Stern School of Business that we have here. And there's a lot of internship opportunities, obviously, because we're in the United States, within New York City, which is an important music city itself. We also have a lot of study abroad opportunities. And this is like speaking of the globalization or internationalization of the music business is important when you have students from China, from India, from Latin America, and across Europe, as well as students from across the US. There are about 150 students in the undergraduate program across the 4 years. We also have a graduate program, so it's a master's degree in music business. The undergrads will do music courses, music theory, music practice, but in the grad program, there's no music requirements. These are really people for more in their sort of 20s who are, are sort of career oriented towards working at music businesses themselves. So almost all of the courses they take are highly specialized music business and some business courses as well. And we also offer opportunities to study abroad for both undergrad and grad. And thank you for bringing up the fact that I've luckily enough, been able to bring about 30 graduate students to Rio about 3 times now. We would have been there in January, but we obviously couldn't come. But hopefully we'll be able to be back in Rio in 2023. I want to say that the students that we have are a mix. I think a minority of them are performing artists or have the idea of being music artists and wanting to study aspects of the business. But for the most part, the large majority of the students, and especially in the graduate programs, they're really more interested in working at music enterprises and knowing about how music fits into not just the labels and publishing and performance, but also, as Carin was mentioning, there's a lot of opportunities for sort of music and health therapy, music and wellness. Nowadays, media companies need music specialists, gaming companies need music specialists. And so to have an understanding of just how licensing works, how rights work, all of that is really important. So what counts as music business, I think, is expanding and changing and growing at all the times. And that's actually a particular aspect of the challenge of being a music business professor over time. Within the programs themselves, like I said, we try to cover as many aspects of the business as possible. We don't do production, but the recording side of the business obviously is well established. Publishing is the oldest side of it, and so trying to understand the difference between songwriting and recording rights, that's something we work on. And live and concerts, festivals, things like this. These are still at the core. But I've been teaching in the program since 2008, and so in the last, say, half dozen years or so, we've really had to develop new kinds of courses in things like data analytics. Data analytics wasn't something that music business students needed to understand 10 years ago, but it's really important now. So we have specialized courses in that. The financialization around rights, catalogs, I think that's important as well. And also trying to train students in how media and tech businesses change. The music business is primarily like a tech-driven business now. And so trying to understand the technology sides of things is important. I'm also interested in things around like cultural governance and policy. I'm very interested in the music cities paradigm and how, developing policies which are supportive for music professionals and music venues can be part of a city governance structure, or the way that, in different countries you have ministries of heritage or departments of culture, and the roles that kind of governance levels can play. In terms of pandemic challenges, pretty much everything that we do, because we're not doing performance and production, it really was, it had its own challenges, but moving things over to Zoom while we had to didn't really disrupt the teaching mission, I think, of what we were trying to do. And now we're all back in classrooms again, but now the challenge is teaching to a whole room of people all wearing masks, right? And teaching in a mask. So that's a weird thing, but all educators are dealing with that. And I just think I've got a couple of ideas about where I think challenges lie for music business education, which are tied closely to the changes in music business, but also are about focusing on the education side of it. So one is just trying to keep up, as I mentioned, the pace of change and the technological aspects of the business. So it was already one thing to move from understanding, and my PhD was really in, what was happening with Napster and globalization in the early 2000s. So I was, switching from the, over to streaming and trying to understand, but that was one thing I had to learn how to do. Now understanding like how platforms work and platformization, trying to deal with Fortnite and Twitch. That was already a tricky thing to kind of wrap my head around. And now we have to deal with things like blockchains, and I didn't know what an NFT was in January, and now it has to be something that we've got to be able to discuss intelligently. Teaching about algorithms and artificial intelligence and machine learning. It's like my concern right now is how well are we able to do that? Who do we need to bring in to be able to discuss that intelligently? But that's also difficult when the people that design algorithms can't really explain exactly how they work or the output from them, right? We're seeing that in the discussions around Facebook right now. What are the consequences of technologizing cultural activities without really understanding the consequences of that? I'm also interested in always trying to think about new kinds of economies around music. So again, talking about participatory and attention economies was something that we kind of inherited a little bit from the last the 2000s. But now we're talking about fan economies, user-generated content economies, and just more recently, creator economies. And so, and then we've got this blockchain crypto thing kind of creeping up on us as well. So I think the challenge for us is really how to keep up to date with this, but without, to use an academic term, reifying the new. Like, how do we stop being so concerned with all the brand new shiny things and actually contextualize these changes in ways that can serve the students when the next wave of change or the next new tech or the next new platform starts to garner their attention. And actually, so this speaks to what I think is important in music business as an academic space right now, is that there's important to have people who are from business and have worked in music businesses and can talk about how music businesses are structured. But I think it's also important to have academics who are able to provide critical context to these kinds of changes, how to think about technology in ways that bring in critical theory, cultural studies, sociology, politics, political economy, globalization. These are things that have really stood me in good stead as the business changes very rapidly, that we're kind of embedded in. How to approach it from a critical perspective and encourage critical thinking about things is something that I think is a balance that needs to be struck in the music business education space. So it's not just teaching about the business, but it's also about the culture of music and about culture per se. I just want to say that this is also really important to the diversity and inclusion issues that you've asked, that you've introduced as a theme for this panel. It's important to explain why diversity, equity, and inclusion and thinking about intersectionality of race, gender, class, and orientation are crucial from social perspectives, economic perspectives, and not just a sort of corporate PR exercise, right? And so we know that these are problems in the music industry. How do we teach students that it's not just a box to tick, that you're dealing with inclusion, but actually why it's important and how important it is to the social and cultural and economic life of people, and how that works for music business as well. So I see our role really as educators. We're not just training people for jobs, but there's a tension in that. There is, especially in the United States, where there's, higher education can put you into debt for life, right? So there's obviously an important aspect around the training people for careers, but I also think that it's important to teach people, not just STEM, as we call it here, like science, tech, engineering, and math, but not at the expense of humanities, arts, sociology, and political economy. So I think balancing that over many different kinds of classes and course offerings across the kinds of instructors that get hired either full-time or as part-time or adjunct instructors, but also around student expectations, what the students want, what they think music business is, and not just giving them what they think they need, but expanding what it is that they really need to be thinking about. So I think that's about 8 minutes. We'll stop there. I'm looking forward to hear what everybody else has to say.
Thanks, Sam. Yes, lots of questions. Yeah, really challenging. So Ace, please.
Okay,
Welcome.
hi, thank you. You can hear me okay. Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Carin. It's brilliant. It's fantastic to be here actually with you as well. I'm quite honoured, I think, to be sitting in this seat today. So let's talk about London. You know, we're based in London, ICMP. We have 2 campuses, okay? They're about 10 minutes apart. They're more or less in central London, about 20 minutes from the centre, okay? London is like a heart of creativity. Right, it's one of the hearts of the music business. When we think about London, New York, LA, Tokyo, things like this, it's surrounded by opportunity. Like your network is your net worth here. It's a very inclusive society as well. As we know, it's very cosmopolitan in London. There's a lot of musicians, there's a lot of bands, there's a lot of people pass through London as well. So there's a lot of opportunity as well. Okay, you're surrounded by creativity. Like wherever you go, to the art galleries, to new things happening, from the underground to the mainstream. And with ICMP, we tap into that. That's what we do. Collaboration is king. Especially for me, I'm head of business partnerships, industry development as well, industry partnerships. So what I tend to do is with all of our courses, we have everything from musician courses, you know, bass, drum, guitars, vocals, keyboards, up to the music business and entrepreneurship. We have, you know, undergraduate, postgraduate, and we also have some short courses as well, 6-month courses. People can come on campus, and we have an online platform as well that we're actually growing at the moment. But one of the things for us is actual people in the building. We found that with the pandemic, obviously we had to flip it around and go to Zoom, but we tried to keep as much stuff as interactive as possible. So a lot of musicians quickly jumped into the file sharing, writing songs together, you know, and submitting exams these ways with videos. But what we would do is we would include them in competitions with songwriting with other people. So the inclusivity didn't just go back and forth between Zoom sessions, it actually went between students in different places. We also, one of my jobs is to manage, we have 30 partner schools around the world. And so the collaboration there between those schools is really important. Before the pandemic, we were popping in between countries and popping over to, you know, LA and to Portugal and France and Spain, songwriting camps, visits, people were coming over to us. And it was really inclusive. It was really collaborative. And so what we've tried to do is keep those conversations going. So it means that we have footholds in other countries. We know what's going on. You know, we can use their analytics that they're bringing back over to us, what's going on in their market, and our students can be immersed in that as well. So being immersed in the industry is really important to us. Collaboration is super important, but it doesn't just go across colleges and students. It's not that insular. We actually bring in the industry to us, right? And we also come out to the industry for other people. So we're very big. ICMP, for instance, has a careers hub and employment opportunities hub in it, which I'm sure everyone has this, where we help to match students to certain internships and jobs and things like this, so that they can kind of start their career while they're still on campus. And then, or when they move out, if they haven't got something going on, we'll try and fix them up there as well. But what we do is we talk to employers and we have industry partnerships. So we've got about 25 industry partnerships that aren't just a bit of gear in the room. So, you know, we can see guitars between me and Sam in the background. When people walk in the room, they don't just go, there's a guitar from PRS Guitars. It's like, there's a guitar, there's a whole store of them downstairs for them to use. There's a competition. Oh, here's a masterclass. Here's an internship. There's a job opportunity going at PRS Guitars, right? There's an online competition for someone to win a cap, you know, things like that. So every industry partner we work with, we have a bespoke plan which implants that into the education as the core, right? So it's always up to date, it's fresh. It could be a masterclass on how to do, you know, clinics as a job, or it could be on drum tuning, or it could be, you know, using a product, right, in those sense. So they're up to date on what manufacturers do, but at the same time, we bring their artists in who talk about what's happening in the industry. So the collaboration between partnerships and industry is super important to us. And I said, they're global as well. So we don't have to have them all in the building. We can do them online. And what stems as well is our masterclasses. So we have lots and lots of special guests in. So I'm sure you guys have probably heard of Sylvia Massey, because she's from over your side. I love Sylvia. Sylvia's a friend of mine. She's coming in on Wednesday. She's going to do an in-person masterclass for the guys in the studio. So we have that kind of in-person kind of stuff going on as well, with some really great artists. I mean, next week we've got Phil from Motorhead, How amazingly cool is that? Okay, so it can go from extreme rock to fantastic production. Being based in London, being right in the center of it, and having international students come in as well, it's going to be really obvious that our student base is very diverse. You know, our diversity and our inclusivity is just a given. It's taken, that is what we're about. It's our makeup. And it's also reflected in our staff, because all of our staff are industry professionals, so they're all working in the industry at the same time. So what's important about this, about your topics, about challenges in the music industry, is the fact that they're out there, they're in the field, and they've also got, a lot of them got big track records as well. They've worked with a lot of impressive kind of artists as well. So not only have they got that experience, they're still out there in the field working. So they bring that back into the classroom to the students. We have a lot of extracurricular activities which involves them as well. And with our business, music business and entrepreneurship, we're always encouraging students to tap into these people, the companies, and to become part of them as well. And we also, our inclusivity also goes beyond obviously the diversity of ethnicity. It also goes into widening participation and access and participation plans. So we have scholarships and bursaries. So we can bring people in who don't have access to funds to actually come in and study anything from a short course to a whole degree or a master's. And we can look after them that way. But we've also just introduced high profile artist scholarships as well, which are ambassadors that are kind of backing up these things. And at the moment they're in performance. And so we've got all different people. For instance, we have we've got Yolanda Charles, who's got an MBE here. She's a bass player, very fantastic British bass player. She's obviously offering the bass scholarship. So that's all of your fees paid for the entire degree. You know, we've got Charisse Osei, she plays with Simple Minds and Brian Ferry and all these different people. She's doing the drums. Vula Malinga, who's from Basement Jacks, things like that. She's doing the vocals. So as you can see, what we're about is, it's very inclusive, it's very collaborative, it reaches out into industry all of the time, and it brings that back. So any changes, we're proactive, as in we're seeing these and we're working, you know, to build a future, but also really reactive, because we can get something right now and go, that's not working, how can we solve that, and move straight into it. So a lot of our graduates go straight into places where they've have a relationship with the employers, with the manufacturers, with the agencies already, because they've met these people. And a great new initiative we've got is we're plugged into a lot of different places. So there's a new place in London. I'm not sure if you've heard of it yet, but it's soon going to explode. It's called the Design District, and it's been created at the Peninsula. And all these different creatives are all going into this one area. And it's everything from someone who, you know, makes a symbol up to a tech company or education. So we've got a new initiative there where it's a bit like a scholarship, where a business student has just won an office in the center of the Design District for a year to start up their business and be part of the collaboration community. So, I mean, in a nutshell, that's what we do. We're in London. We work with everyone around us globally, partner schools, and we try to make the students like be here and now, right now, you know. And apart from that, it's a lot of fun, because, you know, they're all back on campus now. And the great thing is the collaboration doesn't just stop with the outside people, it actually goes to all the students. So they're all forming bands, and the business people are managing, you know, the guitarists and the singers, you know, and the other people are doing sessions for other people, and the producers are producing the producers, producing the other artists. It's an incredibly vibrant and creative place. And across the two campuses, you know, when you go in there, you feel the energy. And that's one of the things that we have found since we've managed to go back in the building, which was basically from this September. But, you know, I'm looking at your kind of topics that here as well. Obviously, we can get into all of these, but we have looked at all this stuff, and we really address it. I think if it's written in a book, sometimes it's out of date, you know, and so we're kind of like, we're always about the challenges that are going on. We're always about addressing those challenges and seeing how we can solve them or help to solve them with our students and our tutors as well. So I think that's me ranting on for a bit. I'm quite excited being there, as you can see, and I'm very excited that I get to work with so many different people, from the manufacturers right round to the global partner schools as well. So one of ours is LACM. You probably know those guys. We've done some trips with them to South Korea, for instance, and we're doing some partnerships with them at the moment and some competitions. It's a vibrant, exciting place to be.
Thanks, Ace. Yes, that's the beauty of thing, when you have a community, of students, and they can start, collaborating and creating things, music, bands, projects. Carin, during pandemic, lots of musicians had to find other kinds of jobs, mostly on, hospitality, retail sometimes, or some kind of digital job apart from music. Some of them could find a job on the music industry, I mean, as executives or marketing or, anything like that. I'd like to ask you how Berkeley had to dealt with that. I mean, because sometimes it is easier to teach about music business online than to teach how to play an instrument or some other areas of music. I mean, I don't know if it makes sense for you, but for me, many musicians spoke to me about it. I mean, it's easier to learn about music business than to learn music online. How do you see that?
Yeah, that's a great question, Leo. I think in a lot of ways, collectively, we all upped our game with respect to technology. And I think there were ways of exploration that, by virtue of the time that you had maybe in your home and maybe extra free time on your hands, that you looked for outlets to express your creativity. And to connect to your fans or your emerging fans. So I would say, a lot of the ensembles that would take place on Berkeley's campus became about remote collaboration and laying into the technology and how you can work effectively in remote contexts. And so it also became about video performance and ways that you can express yourself in ways that you maybe hadn't experienced before. But I think it was a reflective time too, and lots of questions about what would happen when the pandemic would end, what would happen next, and I think it became a time where certainly the audience or the students that we serve outside of Berkeley, who are largely adult learners, came in droves to Berkeley Online, particularly for music business education. And I think Sam spoke really eloquently about the challenges as educators that we have, both teaching in a global context and one in which the ground is shifting and really by the day. And in many ways, I think online education serves students really well because they could you may go to class 2 times a week in, a residential setting, but online you have a learning platform where it's 24/7 and you're engaging with people around the world and you can share things that are happening by the minute. And so I think that presented a wonderful opportunity. I will say that when students came back to Berkeley in the fall, there was a joyfulness to that. In terms of music creation and being in a room together physically that I think we're still striving to improve and perfect in an online context, because that feeling of isolation and particularly for creatives who want to share their humanity and connect with other humans, it's so incredibly important to be able to have those meaningful outlets. And so campus has never been more vibrant, but that to me is in many ways such a treasure and a laboratory where you can dive head in for a focused period of time and meet people together from around the world. But online is this really compelling way to do that as well that serves you lifelong. And as this industry that we know and love shifts by the moment, online's a great way to be leaning into that and making sure that you're gaining insight and skills that can translate into jobs and revenue streams for you.
Thank you. Yeah, definitely. It's a great opportunity. I mean, to connect people around the world, right? And I can feel that because I have to finish my master's online anyway, so it was a different experience. But yeah, Sam and Ace, would you like to add something about all these questions we've got here? I mean, Sam mentioned, all these new trends about NFTs and blockchain. I mean, yeah, do we have to address it? I mean, is it really something students have to deal with right now? I mean, is it a business opportunity? Is it something bands and musicians will have to work with?
Well, let me just say that, like I said, I started to read. I kept hearing about NFTs in my just reading around, music business news and the tech business and Twitter and things. But then when I came in to teach my first class in person again in the fall in September, I teach a class called Interactive Internet and Mobile Music, and I've been a gamer since I was a toddler, really. So I've always been interested in how games and music businesses fit. That's a Beatles rock band guitar behind me, by the way. So I'm aware of the tech new changes and tech that comes in, but the students, a bunch of them just came in and was like, I said, I think we might have to talk about NFTs, and a bunch of people nodded, yeah, we've heard about this and we need to know what it is too. But I do want to emphasize, there's a lot of new shiny things that happen in music business and technology, and thinking about TikTok. At first TikTok comes in and I knew where it had come from, musically, and I knew it had the licensing in place, and I knew music was one of the reasons why TikTok was becoming so important. But then you're in a position of having to talk about why it's banned in India, right? Or the fact that TikTok is actually owned by a very significant and important Chinese company called ByteDance, and what the relationships are between Chinese, how media and culture is working in China, and the way that the government there can just switch off reality TV shows suddenly, but also how it's being used in different parts of the world. And I want to just say something else about the internationalization of it. Different people in different parts of the world are using different apps. So there's some parts of them that everyone's kind of sharing. But I think that now more than ever, I've tried to cover what we call emerging markets, even though a lot of them are very well emerged. South Korea used to be one, but now it's pretty fully emerged. But we can't approach emerging markets as if they're all the same, because there are really amazing techs and companies, enterprises being developed in different parts of the world for their local audiences. So even as much as you've got Universal and Sony and Spotify opening offices in Middle East and North Africa, or they're in Nigeria now, or they're moving into India, it's really important to recognize how the tech companies in those countries are making products and services for those audiences. And it's not as if American corporate interest can just suddenly turn up in those places and tell everyone how it's done. So I think that's also a challenge for music business education, is de-Americanizing the music business and the perspectives of it. And I teach a class on emerging markets. I've talked about Brazil for many years, but just in the last 4 or 5 years, I've really had to get to grips with Afrobeats and the Nigerian market, and how that's tied into their film business and entrepreneurship that's taking place there as well. And then you're also dealing with things like diasporas, right? So I was just teaching a class about the Spanish language diasporas and how Spanish language music and why Latin American music is exploding everywhere, because it's sort of bypassing linguistic barriers, and that used to be very much a way that the domestic music businesses in each country is operated. So I think trying to deal with new tech while also dealing with the fact that from being in the United States doesn't mean we get to see everything equally. We've got to be sensitive to how things are happening in different places, so that we can, that's part of the diversity issue. Again, it's not just about ethnicity. It's really about recognizing that what's used to call global is really now what we call glocal, right? It's really it's global and local simultaneously. And how do those two things interact with each other?
Right. Thank you. Ace, you are a professional musician. You're pretty famous in Brazil, right?
Really?
With Skankanansi. Yeah, his band. I don't know if you know it.
I didn't know.
Great band, great band. I'd like to ask you about that kind of discussion we have. If an artist should or look for a music business education, or could he dedicate himself only, for creation?
You as an artist, yes, I've been 28 years now. I've been going, and I've been on quite a high level for 28 years, so I'm quite lucky in a way. And so I've seen all sides of it. I've even managed a band myself. I've taught. I've had my own companies. I do still have my own companies. We have our own record company. I'm immersed in it myself, right? Even though I don't teach that in my college, I'm kind of living through it at the same time. So I think with artists these days, there is a lot of there's a lot of challenges, obviously, right? But I think that actually, repeat me the end of the last question, the last bit you said.
About the necessity of an artist to study music business.
Yeah, so exactly. So I think with an artist studying music business, a great example is we did some scholarships a few years ago, and we had the Skunk Anansie Scholarship in London, and some people who applied for it, they applied for the music business, but they were fantastic artists. Right. And the reason is they said, well, you're not going to teach me much more about playing because I've kind of got it. Right. And I can get that down. But what I do need is I need to know the music business. Right. So then I can work, I can promote myself, have my own labels. But also at the same time, even if you're not going to have your own label and manage yourself, you can navigate the business really well if you have the knowledge for the people, the team you're creating around you and you're working with. So if you understand what a record deal is and what management does, and how things work all around you, doesn't necessarily mean you have to do that. You can still concentrate on your creative craft, right? But you know how to navigate the industry because you know the right people to pick and the right decisions to make with those people when they suggest things as well. So I think that, being an artist and studying music business is really clever. It's a clever thing to do, right? But it shouldn't distract from the fact that you are an artist as well. But a lot of people, when they're players, when they get to a certain level, they are that good. They just go in increments, right? And they'll get better and better, But if they know the business and they can navigate the business of their business, it's super important. And that's one thing I've always done. The difference is I've done it from the school of hard knocks, haven't I? From the street upwards. I've made a lot of mistakes and it's taken me a long time to get to a place where I have a successful record label, for instance, right? But if you study a path, if you've got a course path to study, it can give you the right building blocks to work from, and it can accelerate your entry level into something. So, like anyone can go to the internet, can't they? And they could learn anything they want. But if you haven't got a clear path of study, it doesn't really make sense. You need that incremental learning and you need a path to follow. And I think that's very important. So studying music business and go to college is only going to do you favors. It's going to accelerate your place. It's going to put you to a further starting point than someone who, it's like being taught to play a guitar. You teach yourself, it might take you 3 years. If you have lessons, it could take you 6 months, and you'll be at the same level. So I think music business education is super important. And I think it's very important if you're an artist to at least know the business of your business.
I would agree with that and just say at Berkeley, the campus curriculum, we have a core music set of requirements, and it's a lot of harmony study, a lot of ear training study, some music technology. We actually don't have a course on how you make money and sustain your career in the business. That's required of all students. And I actually think that's pretty fundamental. And, when you look at surveys of how musicians earn their living, they're usually doing more than one thing. And I think to your point is if you know where opportunities are and you're able to skill up and identify and go after these opportunities, you have a greater chance at having music be your full-time career. And I would just say we're at an interesting inflection point. And Sam, I think your program does this too, where the music business management program at Berkeley requires that you fulfill that core music set of requirements. So you're doing a lot of harmony study, a lot of ear training study, like I said. We've just introduced a Bachelor of Arts in Music Industry Innovation and Leadership, and we're removing that. So you have a very baseline set of requirements that just gives you some vocabulary to speak about music, but we're going hard on focus your time on the business if you want to be a business person in the industry, because there's so much to study. And so I think it's super interesting to me. But I think out of everything, I tell every student, whether they want to be a performer, a producer, a business person, you can't go wrong by going as deep as you can on the business side and on the technology side. They'll serve you well. And you can't know everything, but if you've got critical concepts under your belt, you can apply those in various contexts and you'll never go wrong.
So it's kind of amazing you said that, Carin, because the undergraduate degree that we offer is a Bachelor of Music with a specialization in music business. So they are taking these core, like I said, music theory, music performance, vocal training, some keyboards. And we are right now in the midst of, it's going to take a few years to pull it off, I think, but we're in the middle of talking with our deans in Steinhardt, the school in NYU, to offer a Bachelor of Science, which actually takes out those core music requirements, because there's so much demand for people to study music business that fulfilling pre-existing music requirements was actually meaning a whole bunch of amazing potential students couldn't come into the program. So we're going to have a Bachelor of Music which does do music business, but in the next 3 years or so, we're hoping to introduce a brand new line in a Bachelor of Science, which is pretty strictly all music business and business studies and economics and some tech, dealing with sort of technology business in there as well. So I think that's, but as I said, in our graduate program, there's no music requirements. And those are people, again, in their 20s, they may be coming from a pre-existing career or job path and like, you know what, I don't want to work in banking or pharma or retail, I really want to work in the music business, even if they're not skilled musicians. And I think that's, I don't think music business necessarily needs to be an offshoot of studying music. I mean, they're still obviously important in having that connection, but music business is so big and moves in so many different areas. And as I said, having some knowledge of the difference between a recording right and a publishing right, it is such a basic thing that so few people really understand. But if you can get people to get that, then they can go and be music specialists at gaming companies, at social media companies, at app developers, and bring musical sensibilities, which I think are, incredibly important, but have that kind of specialization rather than say, let technologists just drive how music culture gets shared and understood and processed. So I think that's why I'm always about trying to find this balance between the music and cultural side and the business and economic side, because there's very few other areas where I think you can combine those two and have them kind of overlap and interact with each other. That's why I really, I love teaching in a music business program, because I get to play with like the ideas around economics and technology and politics, while also with the culture and creativity and the pure sort of music side of it as well.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying as well, both of what you're saying is really right. I mean, we absolutely bang on about portfolio careers. That's what it's all about for us in London with musicians and the music business. It's portfolio careers. You probably will not have one part of your career which will sustain your income enough, right? Absolutely. So you have to diversify, right? And so what we try to do is we try to arm the students, or provide the students with a toolkit. It doesn't matter where you go and what you do, you'll be able to do it. You'll be able to do an interview. You'll be able to get on with that. You'll know enough about this to be able to grasp the underlying kind of concept of it. So it means that someone could study guitar, and they could come out with a bachelor's in guitar playing, but at the same time, they could go and work for Sony BMG, because they would know about publishing rights. They'd also have the confidence and the feel and the vibe about them that would get on with people, because they've been collaborating. They would understand the business enough for them to be an appealing proposition for an employer. So we do get that. We get people who start off on one track, like everybody in the world in music. They start off going one way, and by the time they get to the end of their degree, they go, that was fun, but I really now want to do this. But it's still in music, and because they've collaborated and they've been banged on about portfolio careers and the toolkit that we try to provide them, that's how we try to kind of get people to do what they love. Creativity in the music business, even if you said it's not playing an instrument, right? Or some people start out in business and they actually end up being performers, because they start jamming along with everyone and using the studios, and they get a hit and they go, oh, that's what I was supposed to do. So yeah, we can never determine the end process, but what we can do is influence the way that they can react and interact with the world once they get out there, you know?
And I also think there's no better way to affect positive change with respect to diversity and inclusion in the industry too, where what I get excited about, and I think when you're in a college experience, we know that our students tell us, hey, it's the faculty and expertise that really interest us in why we go, but it's also about the network and the collaborations that emerge out of that experience. And so if we have the best business minds, the best producers, the best songwriters, the best performers, they're going to create collaborations that are going to reshape the industry. And if we're recruiting students from around the world, from many different walks of life, then the riches emerge from that. And in terms of, I think, the quality of the music, the quality of the experience, and the earning potential of different artists and people, professionals in the industry. So I get really excited about that.
Well, thank you all very much. We want to have 5 more minutes. So I'd like to ask you to, share any final thoughts about music business, education, diversity. So please, maybe 1 minute for each one, or 1 minute and a half. But I like to say that the magic about, teaching about music business is exactly what you told me. And sorry, there are some fireworks here in London because of the Diwali festivities,
it's Guy Fawkes
right?
in London. It's the 5th of November.
Yeah.
That's what the fireworks. So it could be Diwali, but it's probably Guy Fawkes night.
I don't know. But,
nobody knows what that
anyway.
is outside. Ace and I know what that is because we're English, but most people don't.
Well, I'll just say yes, that. I mean, if you love music and you are not a musician, you can still work with music, right? There are thousands of ways of doing it. I mean, hundreds of professions, right? And this is really magical. I worked along 10 years with, live music. I founded music venues. I didn't know a thing about the music business. I mean, it worked out. I was lucky. I think I was a good curator, maybe. But if I had some kind of, training about music business, it certainly would have given me much more, a wide vision about how it works. How do we connect to, record labels, publishing companies, everything. So I would have created probably different kinds of business instead of staying only with live music, probably.
Yeah, I think what you're saying as well, from what we're all saying actually, is, with music business, you have to be creative. You have to be one step ahead, right? And you have to really enjoy what you do. But at the same time, you still have to look at what makes money, right? So, there's lots of things you can do for fun and go, that's a cool project and that's a cool project, but you still have to tap into things and go, this is where the revenue streams are. So if it's an NFT, if that's going to make you some money as an artist or your artist, you need to be tapping into that at the same time as doing your charity gig, which is helping people, but it's not going to create an income stream, you at the same time as looking at things like merchandise and your royalties and your flows, and balancing things that won't make money that are also promotional, like certain parts of touring. So that's the thing. It's always about being one step ahead and creating revenue streams, but you still need the creativity and the passion to drive you with it.
Just to follow up on that, I'm thinking about, I mentioned data analytics and how that's become so important to the business, but it's not just that analyzing a spreadsheet. It's about how you creatively tell stories from the data that you have. And we have 2 or 3 graduates of the program who are pretty high up at Chartmetric right now. And their whole shtick is like, we turn data into stories that people can understand. And so that's again, bringing a kind of creative aspect to something which might on the surface be extremely dry, where data analytics sounds super boring. But, if you're combining your data analysis, gathering and skills with the ability to tell compelling stories about what that data is showing, then that can be very helpful. But always with the caveat that, who tells the stories about the data? That's a power relation. And so again, that comes back to diversity issues. You've got to have people who are not just like white tech bros deciding what technology, what data is telling us, because different people with different backgrounds and perspectives would tell different stories about the same data set.
Or perhaps ask different questions too.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. Or, you know, how the data was gathered in the first place is also important, right? And this is something I keep trying to remind our students all the time, is you've got to listen to people with different voices and perspectives, because technology is not neutral, right? And capitalism isn't neutral, and corporate, you know, how corporations work isn't neutral. It's you know, the music business has diversity problems. You know, you look who runs it. And so I just try to make sure that the students, again, are bringing a sort of a critical perspective to anything that's presented to them as this is a fact, this is how it works, this is science, this is technology. It's not ambiguous. In fact, there's an enormous ambiguity in all of that. And I think that's part of an educational mission for us, as I see it.
Well, I don't know how long are they going to, you know, allow us to stay here in this room, but yeah, I mean, on diversity, if we can, you know, discuss it in 2 minutes, maybe. I did a survey a few months ago, and about the Brazilian music industry. I found out that only 5% of the executive positions in music companies were held by Black people, right? So this is really important to understand, because Brazil has 55% of Black people among the population. So something is wrong here, right? So we have to discuss it. And I believe that, you know, the education sector has a responsibility. And as Carin said, I mean, I understand you all have, you know, these programs to make diversity something real, and I just like to, you know, to say something about it in 2 minutes, please.
Well, I mean, I would say Berkeley was founded on the music of the African diaspora. So for us, I think we have to walk the walk in terms of hiring decisions at our institution, who holds leadership positions, you know, who are our teachers, and that's race, ethnicity, gender, all mixed together. And so I think it's hugely important, and it's a wonderful opportunity to show students a different future. And then by virtue of your recruitment strategies too, you're bringing in a diverse student body and sending them out, hopefully, into the industry to reshape it in better ways. So I would say you have to make that an explicit priority for your institution. Otherwise, it's just easy to forget about it, and things don't change. And so I think Berkeley, we've done a lot of introspection over the past 10 years. We still have a tremendous amount of work to do, but you have to make it a priority.
Yeah, and I would say the same thing as Carin, really. I think it comes from your employment, so your staff. It's involving your staff as well in the decisions of the company about the way things are conducted. I think it's the collaborations you bring in. Like we have collaborations with all different societies and different companies, and, you know, She Said So and these type of things, even within the competitions that we bring in. And then it's like, you know, education amongst the students about things as well, everything from Black History Month to anything else that will influence people to think a different way. You know, and then after that, it's about the strategic plan of the company as well, who they bring in and who they get to make decisions to make involved for the future. For us, I think that is.
I think I'll just add, this is all great. These are great points. I just add that I think that there's probably going to be a kind of sort of natural generational shift here, where, you know, people in senior leadership positions came from a highly diversified set of circumstances, whether that's in higher ed in the US or in the, you know, the traditional kind of long, well-established music business itself. But I'm not a big believer in the whole generations thing, but the Gen Zers that I work with, I mean, this is just that they live in a much more diversified and open world with each other. And so I'm kind of optimistic that that'll that'll change over time, but that doesn't absolve people in, you know, well-established leadership positions from really engaging with this. And it's been a long time coming, but it's I'm seeing more and more of it now. And I'm glad to be a part of anything that we can do with that.
I would just say too that students play such a powerful role in this. And, you know, I think the level of student activism that you see worldwide, you know, they're holding us accountable and they're expecting us to deliver. And so I think that's a really powerful component. And, you know, and that comes back to the importance of education is self-empowerment and learning what you can to affect positive change for yourself and for others around you. So I think students hold the keys to that, undoubtedly.
It's the students are demanding more diversity more than anyone above. Like it's not so much from the top down. It's really coming from the bottom up, and that's it has to come from the bottom up if anything's really going to change.
All right. So thank you very much. Sorry about the background noise again. Carin Nuernberg, obrigado. Carin from Berkeley College. Sam Howard-Spink, NYU.
Obrigado.
Thank you. Ace, ICMP London. Thank you very much.
Obrigado.
Obrigado. Obrigado a todos. É prazer. Great pleasure, you know, talking to you. I hope to see you soon. And that's it. I hope everyone take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Yes.
Take care.
Hi, we're back. Thank you all again from this third panel, hosted again by Leo Feijó. He worked double shift with us today, but we are very happy and honored to have him, as I told you guys before. Thank you again. Amazing conversations, wonderful trades between the guests. Another happy panel. And now Leticia will continue on giving the rest of the schedule. We watch more video clips now, but just want to thank you again for everyone who participated on this panel. Leo and all of his guests, thank you. We are honored with your presence. And now Leticia with the rest of the schedule, please.